auxiliary aids upon request to individuals with disabilities.
WKXX, Atala, Anniston, Albertville. Your home for Fox Sports. WKXX is live for the fastest 2 hours in sports talk radio. Get ready for Chase Robinson.
He has got to be a player they can rely on in big situations.
And Gerhard Mathangani.
Has the trust of his team. Sounds like the makeup of his team is in a really good space, and I believe that's because of the culture he's curated down there.
For WKXX Live, these guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
Good Monday afternoon and welcome in. It is WKXX Live. You had a great weekend. Chase and Gerhard back with you as we start another week. And boy, do we have a lot to recap from the weekend, as we're glad to be back with you, and appreciate you for listening. Appreciate our guests we have coming up today. All of our guests appear on the All-American HVAC Service Hotline. We're going to talk some SEC football with Brent Beard of First Coast News down in Jacksonville, Florida. Also with the Second Helping podcast. And we're going to talk about the wild weekend that was SEC football. We invite you to be a part of the conversation right now at 256-413-1029. That is 256-413-1029. Rarely is there a weekend where Auburn, Alabama, and the Braves all lose.
Yeah, and it's impactful really on all three. Obviously, the Braves losing ends their season. Alabama's loss makes you question and take a step back a little bit. Auburn's loss, there's immediate points to what the future will look like. So all three, it's not just losing, it's really impactful losing for all three. We'll dive deep into all of it and just see where the future lies for all three, short term and long term.
Yeah, and again, a lot to cover as we get going today. We do start off by going to the phone lines on this Monday afternoon. Welcome on. Who we got here?
Oh, we got Clay.
How's it going, Clay?
Hey.
It's going. Still licking my wounds.
So what's on your mind today, Clay?
It was a rough weekend for all of us Alabama fans, and I was just real curious if y'all guys saw anything different about this defense lately and what is going on.
Defensively, I think that they still have the same pass rush, and I think that, Nick Saban talked about this. They have great players. They just need to play a little bit more cohesively, and at the same time, they hurt themselves with penalties. So no matter how good you are, if you have a lot of pass interference penalties, just penalties in general really kill you. And this was one of the worst penalized teams, this year. And so I don't think that the defense is cause of major concern. I think small tweaks to this defense will really help them out in the future.
Yep, I believe so. I sure hope it gets better because they're looking shaky right now,
Yeah, certainly. Certainly.
And haven't played great on the road, and you go to LSU, you go to Ole Miss in November, so that's two tough road atmospheres.
Yep, two big games lost for us this weekend, the Braves and Bama. It was rough.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's rare. Like we were talking about, rare you get all these losses in one weekend.
Yes, sir. That is correct. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate the call, Clay.
All right.
The phone lines are open today. If you want to call in, give your thoughts, your opinions on the weekend. We'd love to hear your reaction. 256-413-1029. 256-413-1029. A lot of people are reacting from the weekend because you think about it. It's not often, that we have to talk about an Alabama loss. Mm-hmm. And so I've been reading a lot of Alabama fans this weekend. The sun did come up Sunday morning. Believe it or not.
It certainly did. I think Clay hit on a good point, though. I think the concern, not necessarily that Bama lost, it's how they lost.
Yeah.
They were down early in the game. 28-10, roared back. They got the lead, and I don't know how most Alabama fans were. I kind of relaxed. I was like, okay, Bama's going to do what Bama does and take care of business and be able to come away with a win. But credit Tennessee, they just kept fighting. Obviously, man-to-man defense was going to be very hard in general. I think with both squads, trying to play man coverage because the athletes on both sides, the receiver athletes that we have on both sides, were excellent in this game. And there's a lot of things that Alabama did in the game that really hurt themselves. I mean, you drop a pass, very, very deep in a series that could have made a field goal a lot easier. To me, it was just a mixing of a lot of things.
Yeah.
To me, there's certain teams that have very embedded, deep-seated problems, and then to me, there's teams that have fixable problems. To me, Alabama falls in the latter. They have the fixable problems. They just got to get it turned around very quickly.
Yeah, I think if you want to sum up. Again, a lot happened, but if you want to sum up this game into two really problems for Alabama, it was penalties and drop passes. You just said it. I mean, I go back to towards the end of the game when Gibbs drops that pass. There's no telling what would have happened if he had caught that.
Right.
That could have ended the game.
Yeah.
Really. And then all the penalties Alabama had. So between penalties and drop passes, I mean, in an atmosphere like that, when Tennessee, and that's Tennessee's Super Bowl of the season, you're not going to win that game.
No, exactly, and I think that's kind of the encouraging thing as well. They've played about as poorly as they could have played, and they still gave themselves a chance to win at the end. So, if this does come back down to a game that we see a little bit later on in the season, I think that you could take some hope within you, saying that we played terribly in Knoxville, and we were a few snaps away from being able to win this game. And not only win it, Bama had a chance to win it convincingly. Let's just say that things go right at the last part of the third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter. To me, this is a much, much different result. So, in my opinion, there are some things where Alabama needs to look into the mirror and say, hey, these are the things that we did well. These are the things that we did not do well, and let's fix it. And that's one of the things that Nick Saban addressed in his press conference today about some of those things that where they need to improve. And I kind of agree with him. And he also kind of talked out of, it sounds like mixed messaging. It's not, because he talks about discipline, but he also talks about playing too tight. He gave some insight on the way that the team played, going into that game, and some of the things that the team was feeling. I think they were a little bit tight. I think that the juice of the fans in Tennessee made them a little bit tight. They weren't chanting pregame. Nick Saban asked, why aren't you guys chanting? And so there were some small things that he kind of gave some insight to into the way that they, led up into this football game. But he definitely talked about trying to find places to improve after that loss on Saturday.
This is something that from the bottom up, all right? I mean, I'm talking about coaches. I'm talking about every player. I'm talking about me. We all got to do a better job to help these guys learn from their mistakes, improve and get better. This is not the way you want to manage through a season by games coming down to the last play. And the things that you did up to that point got the game to that point. We want guys to focus on, hey, have fun doing your job, have great energy and enthusiasm and intensity, and go out there and play the next play. Don't worry about results and the consequences of those results, because sometimes that creates anxiety, which sometimes doesn't lead to positive performance. So that's something that we need to improve on.
Nick Saban there talking about his team and improving after that Tennessee game. And I think there's a lot there. Again, there's a tough portion of the schedule coming up. Alabama has a chance to take this game, to learn from this game. And a lot of teams could use a loss every once in a while, because that's where you learn stuff from.
Yep. And Nick Saban's always so quick to point this out. As many championships as they've had, as many, successful games and seasons as they've had, they've only had now 2 teams to go through the season unblemished. And one of those teams was that very first year when they beat Texas. And then the second one was during the pandemic year. Yeah. Outside of that, every other team that has hoisted championship in January lost the game during the course of the regular season. And to their credit, every one of those teams got better after that loss. So it's one of those things where, yeah, it can be crushing if you allow it to be crushing.
Yeah.
One of the great things about Coach Nick Saban and his leadership style is he wants to use every failure as a way to get better. And he always points to that Michael Jordan quote. And Jordan has that great Nike commercial where he talks about all the times that, he's missed shots and he was been asked to win the game and he missed. But then he also does it in the light of that's the reason why he's successful, because he doesn't take it as a self-defeating thing. He takes it as a way to improve. Now, can this team do that? They have the opportunity to do that, and we will see. But as you mentioned, the road's not necessarily easy as they go for these next few weeks.
Yeah, you're right. And I think a lot of people are used to it being Alabama and the rest of the SEC. It's not like that.
Right.
I mean, you got to face that at this point.
Yep.
It's not Alabama and everybody else. There's a lot of good SEC teams. We saw a really good one Saturday. We're going to see Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and teams like that. So it's not just one team anymore. And the SEC, these teams are challenging Alabama. And we talked about penalties, and when you're playing in a place like Neyland Stadium, you're going to have some false starts. You're going to have some miscues because it is unbelievably loud. But the pass interference, the other, penalties like that, I mean, that's somewhat lack of discipline.
Yeah, it is. And Coach Saban talked about it. One of the things that you really need to get good at, especially in hostile environments. And you mentioned the fact that, Neyland's a really tough place to play, period. Not to mention a team starving for a win and starving for a win in this specific game. It was going to be way more difficult. And I think that they found out pretty early on. I think that they let some of the outside noise get to them. But Coach Saban always comes back to make the main thing the main thing. Continue to play with that discipline. And it's one of those things where the tape will speak for itself. In those team meetings now, all you have to do is just cut the tape on, and it speaks for itself. It's not like you have to beat them over the head with this. It's like, hey, guys, X, Y, Z. These things are fixable. We just got to play with more discipline. And he mentioned that in today's press conference as well.
We can't continue to tolerate guys that aren't doing the things they need to do to be successful. Nobody's entitled to a position. Everybody's earned the position that they're in by showing that they have the capability and ability to do it on a consistent basis. And that's something that you have to continue. And the grind of the season, being in the middle of the season, being a little bit hurt, tired, whatever, can't lose your focus on doing the things you need to do to continue to improve and get better, because other people are looking at your flaws too. So, I told the players a little story about, a carpenter has a special light that he finished carpenter to see if the wood is exactly what he wants it to be. He's looking for flaws in the wood. Well, people are looking for flaws in you. All right, whether it's how you block, how you tackle, how you cover, whatever it is you do, how we cover punts, whatever it is we do. And we have to be aware of that and know that we need to correct these things, all right, so they don't become issues for us in the future.
We'll continue to get you ready for Alabama, Mississippi State coming up this Saturday night as the Bulldogs come to Tuscaloosa. Mississippi State also coming off of a loss this week. We'll get into that one a little bit later. I want to dive into Auburn, Ole Miss coming up next as the Rebels take down Auburn. We'll give our thoughts on that one coming up next. Stick around as we continue here on this Monday edition of WKXX Live.
Home protection means feeling safe.
1029 if you'd like to call in and be a part of the show today. We talked about Alabama, Tennessee, and the wild game that was. Auburn made the trip over to Oxford, Mississippi to take on the Rebels. Couple of early turnovers really set Auburn back there at the beginning.
Yeah, it certainly did. And I think when you look back at the game as a whole, I think if you're an Auburn fan, you come away a little bit encouraged that they were able to come back and continue fighting. Played easily the best second half of the season so far. And that's one of the main focuses. So we talked a couple of weeks ago about Sam Pittman wanting to come out in the third quarter, come out well. What do? In practice, they simulate a halftime. That way they can come out in the third quarter and play well. I think one of the things about Auburn is executing there in the second half. They were able to do that, make this one tight. It lets you know, if nothing else, they at least care. What my concern was for Auburn was after the Georgia game, mentally checking out. You hear all the noise, you hear all the talk, and there was a sense that this team could be derailed. But to their credit, it seems like they're still fighting, and they went on the road and played against a top 10 team, and came within a few snaps of being able to either put the game in overtime or win it outright. And so I think for that they need to be commended, but at the same time, a lot of the same small things that plagued them throughout the course of the year plagued them once again. So even though they played better, you still see those stumbling blocks for this team as they move on. So, I think that they're obviously saying all the right things, but they're I think in my opinion being able to hone in and focus in on where their deficiencies are.
Yeah, for sure. And Robbie Ashford again starting at quarterback. TJ Finley came in for a minute. Got to see him for the first time in several weeks. And then Robbie Ashford was back out there in kind of a reverse order of what we saw at the beginning of the year.
Right. I mean, obviously, it's been a whirlwind season for the quarterback position, that quarterback room there in Auburn. It's been back and forth, and you just hope that they are able to find some stability there, because I think a lot of it starts with the quarterback. It's not just the offense, but the team in general starts with the play of the quarterback. TJ Finley won the job. Robbie Ashford played well in the spring, but TJ Finley won the job in the fall. And then Robbie Ashford came in and he's played well in his time there as a starter. So, we'll continue to see what the team will want to do, at that position as they move forward. But to me, I think that they have a lot going for them, but still a whole lot to fix as the season goes along.
Yeah, and it is an off week for Auburn, so no game this week, and so they'll have an extra week to work with to kind of get their composure heading into kind of the second half of the season. Brian Harsin did have a chance to talk with media today at a separate event.
Yeah, he did. He was at the Monday Morning Quarterback Club. Both he and Nick Saban, Auburn's coach and Alabama's coach, usually use that bye week on their usual Monday morning presser day. They'll go to the quarterback club, and then they'll be able to talk to the media and give them some sound and some thoughts about what they're trying to do. And we got two clips, lined up here. And one of them is about the team playing with more confidence and being able to see some fruits of their labor. A lot of people talked about the run game. A lot of people talked about certain elements of the team, and they think they improved. And Brian Harsin talked about playing with those confidence.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think you saw some positives. And that was the goal in that game, to go play confident. Go out there and really cut it loose. So that goes back to your preparation. Can you really go play like that? If you prepared properly, you can. And I thought we had a lot of guys that did it in the game. But you take away the run game, we ran the ball for 300 yards. There were some good things we did in the pass game. The turnovers we have to eliminate. And then ultimately, defensively we got to play better. They ran the ball effectively. And so we know we're better than that. We've showed that in games. We didn't get it done in this last one, but you go back, look at the things we did well, the things that we should have done better, and the reasons why. That's really what it comes down to. It's not that you didn't do it right. It's that this was the reason why it didn't go in our way. And you can really pinpoint that to one or two things. And when you break it down that way, it's not something insurmountable. It's just one or two things that we can correct and be a little bit better at that changes that play. And then ultimately can change the outcome of the game. So when you see it from that standpoint, you sit back on a Sunday and review it, you really see you're not that far off, but that margin for victory is very small. And so you got to execute, you got you got to put guys in the right position to be successful, and that's on everybody to do that. But ultimately, that gives you confidence when you know that you're not that far away, but you know that little bit's really hard to get, and that's what you have to get better at, especially in a week like this, during a bye, and then using that extra week to get ready for Arkansas.
And maybe, this off week is coming at a good time, playing the way they did, having some extra time to get ready for a team like Arkansas.
Yeah, most certainly. And I think that they can, just like we talked about with Alabama, building off of the things that they didn't do well. I think Auburn is the complete opposite. Hey, we've done these things relatively well. We've gotten better at these things. One of those things, running the football. Can they build on that in a really, really, tough time going to or playing against Arkansas, a team that, has really good defense? They're playing for something as well as they move forward into the year. So yeah, there's a lot of things for Auburn I think that they can use as positives as they go forward, while Alabama's kind of looking at themselves and seeing, hey, where do we need to fix things from a negative perspective?
Yeah.
What do we do wrong? For Auburn, I think you could just stack a bunch of correct things that we are doing well in order to continue to build that confidence, the one that they played with in Oxford.
Yeah, for sure. And there's going to be talk for the rest of the season on Brian Harsin's future and his job security there at Auburn. And I know he was asked about that today.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly represents some of the things that they're going through: adversity, off the field distractions. This has been a constant theme since we turned the calendar to 2022. It felt like for the last 10 months we've been dealing with this from Auburn's perspective of being able to shut out the noise about everything. And Coach Brian Harsin was asked, pretty point blankly about his job security and how he, helps tune out the noise. And he kind of gave some details on how he handles his day-to-day business as he, navigates through this world of all the Twitter talk.
It's not everywhere I look. I mean, that's number one. Yeah, that's not where I go. I mean, I really, I've said it before. I mean, I go back, and it doesn't matter where I've been and what I've done. I always focus on the job I have to do and control the controllables. And I learned that a long time ago, and I don't know if that's just something that I'm very grateful for, that I learned that as a young coach, just to focus on the task at hand and to have the discipline to do that. And to me, that's what I think everybody should do. I think when you get caught up in things that are out of your control, it doesn't matter what you do. We're talking football. I think that's going to be a disaster for anybody because it happens to everyone. And so stay focused on the things you can control. Know that it's pretty matter of fact in certain situations. If we do this, we'll be better. At the same time, keep developing yourself as a person. Be a good husband, be a good father, be a good leader. All those things are still the most important thing. And it will translate into football and how we go out there and finally execute a plan and put it together and get guys in the right spot to win football games. And we know that. And so I get to see it every week. And I got confidence in our staff and our players and what we're doing. And they got to do the same things, keep controlling what we can. That's all that matters.
And it does appear that Auburn's not going to make a move in the off week, like was reported several weeks ago, that most likely they'll be waiting till the end of the season to make a move on Brian Harsin. But we'll keep you covered as that unfolds. We'll take a break here as Brent Beard's going to join us, talk some SEC football, recap the weekend that was. We'll do that on the other side.
Gadsden, we are your local sports station, Fox Sports 102.9.
We continue on this Monday afternoon. It is WKXX Live. Chase Robinson, Gerhard, Mathangani here with you as we finish up a big weekend of SEC football. We're going to talk about it now. Brent Beard joins us, college football analyst with First Coast News, also co-host of the Second Helping podcast, has been covering SEC football for a number of years. Brent, as always, appreciate you coming on with us.
Yep, glad to come on. Certainly a big week in the league, to say the least, but that's what October is all about. So, and we've got, now I know there are a lot of teams that have off weeks this week, but there are also a lot of still important games to play this week.
You know, going back to Saturday, you mentioned it being October. October's such a fun time in SEC football, and that game in October, everybody looks forward to, the third Saturday in October. It lived up to it for the first time in, 15 years. Tennessee was able to go out and get a win. Your thoughts as you watched that game unfold, back and forth, lots of penalties on Alabama's side. Your thoughts there on the Tide and the Vols?
Tennessee had a really good plan. I really don't think Alabama did. Particularly on defense, and they were playing catch-up most of the night. But, again, Bryce Young was, he was spectacular, frankly. 455, 2 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs had another big day. I thought Cam Latu played very well. Bama got outrushed 182-114. Obviously, everybody is accentuated the penalties, and I get that. It was, and I don't harp much on penalties, and haven't done that over the years. But some of the penalties, frankly, in this game, and I would go with on both sides, were just egregious. Frankly, that officiating crew needs to be suspended and not do another SEC game for a while, frankly, and I'll be interested to see where that ends up with them. But, again, Tennessee playing extremely well with a quarterback in Hendon Hooker, who, if he wasn't in the Heisman race, and I've certainly got to vote, he deserves to be. 5 touchdowns. Jalen Wright was had 71 yards at running back. Jabari Small. Tennessee ran the ball well. Also, what Jalen Hyatt did with 5 touchdowns and 207 yards is, frankly, just absolutely amazing. Obviously, the biggest win for Tennessee in quite some time. So now the reality of it is where do these teams go? Tennessee obviously they've got UT Martin. That's going to be easy, but then they've got Kentucky, and then they've got Georgia. So that will be if they lose, it's going to be one of those two, because they end with Missouri, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. Now, even with not winning the game, Alabama's still got the whole season in front of them, beginning with Mississippi State and then an off week. They've really got a 3-game season right now, and that 3-game season is Mississippi State, LSU, and Ole Miss. And that's kind of where they are. What they've got to do is they've got to reevaluate and Nick Saban said it a few minutes ago, all the positions are up for grabs, and no one has, probably besides Bryce Young, and I would say Jahmyr Gibbs and Will Anderson, a lot of the others are could be moved around, but this game was on the Alabama coaching staff in a lot of ways. The players were not ready to play. They had very low energy. Saban even said coming out of the locker room, they're usually chanting something, and they were quiet. So what in the world is that about? They've got to take a hard look at the defense. the secondary and who is playing where and what they need to do, because the way, obviously, the secondary played is just unacceptable. And I don't know why they could not and would not rush the passer. So that was another big deal. But no question, biggest Alabama-Tennessee game in 15 years with a lot of consequences yet to be decided from it.
For sure. Brent, if you were to forecast Tennessee moving forward, do you like them to go to Atlanta? If you had to put, let's say you had to put a sizable amount of money on the future of Tennessee football, do you consider them one of, if not the favorite in the East, or do you still give that crown to Georgia?
I still think you've got to beat Georgia before you go to Atlanta, and that's going to be the situation that is here again. Obviously, with that game being in Athens coming up in about 3 weeks, that's going to be obviously a gargantuan game. And again, I mean, to me, it comes down to the Tennessee defense. I mean, we know what they can do with the offense. I mean, they're as good as anybody playing 7-on-7 football, but I don't think Georgia will have 17 penalties, and I don't think Georgia will have a defensive lineman who goes brain dead on a punt return and touch the ball and try to pick it up. I mean, Tennessee would probably even in Athens be the favorite right now. But they still would need to obviously win that game. And look, if they do and Bama runs the table, you've got a rematch in Atlanta.
That would that'd be a lot of fun if that was to happen. We're talking SEC football with Brent Beard, hitting on some other SEC games from this weekend. Kentucky beat Mississippi State 27-17. I thought two really good quarterbacks going into this game. Will Levis, of course, with Kentucky. Will Rogers having a great season with Mississippi State. Were you surprised Kentucky pulled this one out?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That was a real character win for Kentucky. And the main ingredients were Will Levis with 230 yards and a touchdown, and Rich Rodriguez, who we knew when he came back that he would eventually get it together. 30 for 196. It's amazing, frankly, and that's even without Tavarian Robinson playing. But Kentucky is a really gritty football team. They were they really played good defense against Mississippi. And now State had won several games. Even the Pirate, Mike Leach, said that they'd gotten way too cocky for themselves in the game that brought them down to earth. But this is a lot about Kentucky rebounding and playing much better. They're off this week, but the job, I still say, the job that Mark Stoops has done at Kentucky is well undervalued for what he's given them.
For sure. The LSU Florida matchup to me was interesting because to me, this game usually shows you the trajectory for both teams as they move forward. Were you surprised at the outcome, and where do you see both these teams moving after that big game on Saturday?
Well, I think LSU's in better shape. I mean, they're 5-2. A huge game with Ole Miss coming up this week. Jaden Daniels played very well, 349 and 3 touchdowns, ran for 44 yards and more touchdowns. The guy who really kind of showed up in this game was Kayshon Boutte, the wide receiver, 6 for 115. So that made a big difference because he kind of had a breakout on that night. So I still think LSU's in pretty good shape. I mean, the worst they're going to be is maybe 8-4, maybe 9-3, which I think will be a great night, a great start for Brian Kelly. I don't know about Florida. They're 4-3. They've got Georgia next here in Jacksonville. That'll be 4-4. Anthony Richardson is so enigmatic. 15-25, 185. Had a great rushing touchdown. Had 9 for 109. Florida's strength is still running the ball. They didn't get a whole lot from Montrell Johnson or Trevor Etienne, but their defense at times can be abysmal, and it was. So that's one thing. I mean, Florida's allowed at least 26 points 5 times, and that is the group that Billy Napier's got to get fixed above all. But Florida is kind of like Florida State here. They just need to get to a winning season and get to a bowl game.
You mentioned Ole Miss, the next opponent for LSU. The Rebels got a win over Auburn. Thought Auburn played a much better second half, was able to keep themselves in that ball game. What did you make of the game plan for Auburn and kind of what's next for the Ole Miss Rebels after the win?
Look, I thought Auburn played an exceptional game, frankly. Now, Jackson Dart was pedestrian, 9 of 19 for 130, but that's not what they do, is they run the ball. Quinshon Junkins had 139, Zach Evans had 136, Jackson Dart had 115. Man, that's a lot when you're able to do that. 3 Ole Miss players rushing for 100 yards, and they lead the SEC 448, the best under Lane Kiffin. So, I mean, look, Ole Miss has got maybe LSU, Bama, and Mississippi State to beat them, and that's going to be about it. Now, obviously, Auburn, on the other hand, again, I will say they played very well. They were in the game. What they finally did is what they should have done a while back, is to run the offense through Tank Bigsby instead of Robbie Ashford. Bigsby had 179 yards. That made a lot of difference. So all in, Ashford was 8 of 17 from 140, had 2 picks, which certainly hurt during that time too. But they hung in. I know there's a lot of criticism for Brian Harsin, but the truth is they've got a game plan and they continue to play hard, and that's frankly all he can do right now.
No doubt about it. One of the other things I was thinking about as far as it relates to SEC teams, this wasn't an SEC and SEC, but Arkansas went to a really tough place to play against BYU and picked up a big win there, a much needed win. Do you see them being able to use this to be able to get back on track to where we thought they could be at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, there's no doubt that was one of the more below the radar wins I think we had. KJ Jefferson was back, 29-40, 367. Rocket Sanders was just on fire, 175 yards. He actually leads the SEC in rushing yards. That's pretty impressive, to say the least. They are off. Then they play Auburn. But this Arkansas team, they're 4-3. I still say, guys, that before it's over, with Auburn and Liberty and LSU and Ole Miss, Missouri, oh yeah, they'll easily be able to go to bowl game. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that with an absolute brutal schedule, if the Hogs end up with 8 wins, maybe even 9.
Definitely will be interesting to see what happens there with the Arkansas Razorbacks. We're talking SEC football. Brent Beard joining us. You can listen to him on the Second Helping podcast, SEC football podcast there, as well as down in Jacksonville, Florida on First Coast News. Brent, as always, appreciate you coming on with us, talking some SEC football. We'll do it again real soon, but appreciate your time today.
Always, guys. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you. Always good to talk some SEC football. You know, how does Mississippi State always end up playing Alabama the week after they lose to somebody?
It always seems to work out that way. but he mentioned it. Brett mentioned it with Mike Leach, talking about how this team probably got a little overconfident.
Yeah.
And they were racking up points. They scored 40 plus in 3 straight games, and I think they were reading some of their own press clippings and feeling good about themselves and taking on a team in Kentucky that they were playing good but not great, and Kentucky came in there and won it. But yeah, once again, Mississippi State, another team that will take a loss, then play Alabama, and so it's going to be a good get back situation for them and some extra incentive to get back on the winning side.
Yeah, for sure. We'll take a break here, come back, talk some more football and much more as we roll on this Monday afternoon. Stay with us. WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9 on this Monday afternoon. Chase and Gerhard here with you until 4 o'clock. As we're getting ready to wrap up hour number one. We've been talking a lot of SEC football after the wild weekend it was. And I know, Gerhard, according to the Power Index, still got Alabama pretty high.
Yeah, this is something I was really interested in seeing after the loss, because the Football Power Index, for those that are unfamiliar, essentially it's a measurement of the strength of a team. It's supposed to be the best indicator of the team's performance as they move forward. Now, they use a lot of different metrics, about 20,000 simulations in it. So it's a really computer-based, really analytical system. And it's a pretty good predictor of what the teams will be as they move forward. But they have a ranking. So they rank all 131 teams. And I found it really surprising, because I normally just do internally, I do a guess of where teams will, drop and rise. Alabama's still ranked number 2 in the nation, according to College Football's Power Index. So I thought that was really, really interesting. They have Ohio State number 1, Bama number 2, Georgia is at 3, Michigan is at 4, followed by Texas at number 5, Tennessee, surprisingly, down at number 6, ahead of Clemson. And then you have also Ole Miss there at number 8, Utah at number 9, as well as the USC Trojans at number 10. So you see the way that the things have shaken out in the real world, and as compared to what they have in the Power Index, it's kind of interesting. And also SP Plus is another forward-facing ranking system. It's another one that's really heavily adjusted to use the computer rankings. Essentially, it measures it adjusts for tempo, both on offense and on defense, and it's supposed to measure efficiency. Give a internal guess there as well. Alabama's number 3 according to SP Plus. So Ohio State's 1, followed by Georgia, Alabama, and then Michigan, Tennessee, Texas at number 6, Ole Miss 7th, UCLA, interestingly enough, still undefeated. Number 8, Oregon is number 9, followed by Minnesota at number 10. Once again, it's a different metric system, so it's not supposed to pick the top 10 best teams. It's a different measurement than College Football's Power Index. So I thought those measurement systems were really interesting. So for Alabama fans who were, little despondent this morning, at least the computers really like Alabama's projections as they move forward. Another quick little insight here. They also give percentages to win the national championship, win out, things like that. Alabama right now has got a 19% chance to win the national championship, according to this poll, and make the playoff, about 35% chance to do that. Ohio State has the best odds to win a national championship, according to this predictor, at 29%. Georgia in at number 2 at 24%. So even though Alabama sits right in the middle of those two, Bama and Ohio State and Georgia have the 2 best chances to win the national championship, followed by Alabama there at number 3. I thought both were really interesting. Yeah. Also, for one quick clarifying point, for those wanting to know how all the other teams rank, because it does rank all 131 FBS schools, Auburn is 50th, UAB is 59th, South Alabama is 68th, and Troy is 70th.
All right. Interesting stuff there. And hey, South Alabama and Troy played this week on Thursday night. I was talking earlier with J.D. Byers, the voice of the Jags, and he's getting ready for that game coming up on Thursday night against the Troy Trojans. That's always a good Sun Belt game there, good rivalry game there, so that should be good coming up Thursday night. But yeah, interesting stuff there with the Power Index and it's always fascinating to me how all that works, and then to see what happens after a big weekend like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it does it accurately, very scary. Outside of some crazy things happening, injuries and whatnot, because obviously computers cannot they can't factor in injuries and weather and the crowd in Knoxville. It can't factor that stuff in. It's just trying to judge the football team. But I found it really interesting to see the way that they slate this, and for Alabama fans who want to feel good about things going on as they move forward into this week. SP Plus and the College Football Power Index really like the Tide.
There you go. So there's you something to look on the bright side for if you're an Alabama fan and heading into this week against Mississippi State and the tough road that is ahead in the SEC if the Tide wants to get back to Atlanta and get back to the national championship. We're in LA this year, right? For the national championship.
That's right. Yep. I think it's at SoFi. Yep.
Yeah. So the road to Los Angeles. We'll have much more college football talk to get to. We'll talk JSU coming up next. We'll give you an SEC weekend recap. We'll get into the NFL a little bit. We'll even talk about the Braves. I know this is very sad weekend for us Braves fans as well, as the season has come to a close, but we'll dive into them as well. So stay with us as we head into hour number 2 on this Monday afternoon on WKXX Live.
league play. So all their goals are still out in front of them. Everything that they want to do, everything that they are trying to do for this season. You could tell, even though they can't win a national championship, they can't win a conference championship on paper. They're still playing really hard. And I think that Coach Rodriguez has to be really proud of the way his team has been able to continue to find ways to get better as the season has moved along.
Yeah, one interesting note I found from this game, we had a chance to talk with the specialist, the kicker for the Gamecocks, Alex Karadzic, several weeks ago after the press conference, and had a chance to talk with him. But on Saturday, he accounted for 17 points in that game. He hit 4 field goals and then had 5 extra points. That is 17 points for the sophomore Alex Karadzic.
He's a real weapon, one of the best ones in the league. And you and I got a chance to talk to him a couple of weeks ago, and he's really engaging guy. He's really thoughtful, really insightful. And I think that, whenever you have a kicker, I don't think that kickers are one of those main things that you'll win championships. However, no great team has been great with a bad kicking game. You have to have a really good kicking game, and he brings that. And you could tell that there's been a leap from year 1 to year 2, and this year he's been phenomenal. And so if they ever do get in a tight game, he's a reliable weapon. I think he missed his first field goal of the season the other day. But you get that ball in the field goal range, and he can get it. He can get you some points there to end off a drive. So I think that Coach Rich Rodriguez, in addition to what they're able to do offensively, having him as a real weapon as well, it's got to feel good. And he obviously had another great day. I know he was the conference player of the week, the specialties player of the week a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if he won it again this week, but
if he didn't, he should.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go to the conference website and check that. But he certainly is a major weapon for this football team, and I know that they're one that they're proud to have on their side.
Yes, for sure. And Jacksonville State returns home this week for home game number 3 of 4. So Gamecock fans, you'll have a chance to go out to Burgess Snowfield Saturday and check out the Gamecocks and the Lions of Southeast Louisiana. And it's homecoming at Jacksonville State. So, high school coaches hate homecoming. I don't know if it's the same for college, but it'll make for a fun week anyway.
Yeah, it certainly will. And I think a lot of people are really excited about this football team. A lot of old alum are really excited about seeing this football team. So usually, even if you're having a bad season, homecoming is a really special event. And I think now there's some curiosity about, if you haven't seen it, if you live, out of state, but if you haven't seen this team play and you had the weekend off, you'll bring the family down to come watch this team play. I think there's a lot of excitement about Coach Rich Rodriguez, and he's brought it on the field, and the product has been great as well. So I think a lot of people are really eager to see this team. So I expect, once again, another great crowd as they play their, third of 4 home games. There's not that many home dates as well. So that's another factor into it, that all these come at a premium.
Yep. So Jacksonville State coming up this Saturday afternoon, 1 o'clock will be the kickoff. The pregame show will begin at 11 a.m. this Saturday here on Fox Sports 102.9. As Mike Parrish will be having the tailgate show out amongst the tailgaters on Saturday morning. So be listening beginning at 11 o'clock and again 1 o'clock kickoff for JSU in Southeast Louisiana.
Yeah, it should be a really good one between these two teams, and JSU continuing to play well. And for clarification's sake, went to the Conference USA website, and Karadzic did win the special teams player of the week this week.
Rightfully so.
Exactly. 3rd time this season and 6th time in his career as a member of Jacksonville State. He's taken home that honor.
Wow, that's impressive there for Alex Karadzic, the kicker there for the Gamecocks. Let's look around the SEC now at the weekend, and no surprise, the Georgia Bulldogs, they're the top team in the country for a reason, shut out Vandy 55-0.
Yeah, this is a Georgia team that I think, after the Kent State game, and I think after the Missouri game, there were some questions bubbling up. But the last couple of weeks, they've really, put a lot of those narratives to bed. And I think Vanderbilt was kind of a good test for Georgia because they played so well in their home game against Ole Miss the week before. And so these last two Saturdays against Auburn and Vanderbilt, I think they put a lot of the doubts to rest. That this team might be slipping up a little bit, or this team might not be as strong as they were a year ago. This is the Georgia to me that came out and stomped Oregon the way that they did, and came out and took care of business against South Carolina as well a little bit later on in the year. But the last 2 weeks they've scored 92 points and they've given up 10, and so really lets you show that this team's really good and playing really well as they go into some of their deeper parts of their season. I think they get a really good. I did not think I'd be calling it this. a tune-up before that big game against Tennessee when they take on Florida this week. So Georgia's looking really strong.
Yeah, they are. A game we talked about with Brent Beard earlier. Kentucky beats Mississippi State 27-17. And we talked last week, kind of battle of the quarterbacks. Two really good quarterbacks, Will Levis, Will Rogers. But Kentucky able to bounce back after the loss last week and get a win over the Bulldogs.
Yeah, we played some sound last week of Coach Mark Stoops, and I think he took the challenge personally of being able to scheme up a defense that can compete and beat Coach Mike Leach. Those two have a history going all the way back to their Pac-12 days, and when Stoops was at Arizona and Leach was over Washington State, I believe. And so he's had some history with Coach Mike Leach, and so it looks like his defensive game plan worked to perfection. And I think that Mike Leach was also correct in saying that we read our own press clippings a little bit too much. They've been running the ball really well all season. Mississippi State they only rushed for 22 yards total in that game. So you can't ask your quarterback to go ahead and do everything. They put the ball in the air 37 times. His 25 of 37, Will Rogers was 1 pick, 1 interception, 203 yards. So he didn't play up to his standard, but he didn't get helped out by the running game at all as well. So credit Kentucky's defense there in that game. And then on the other sideline, Will Levis, we talked about it. This game could be the one that kind of separates the way the NFL scouts see these two guys. We expect both to be first-round draft picks, but he was very, very efficient as well. 17 of 23, had a touchdown, 230 yards, a 91.3 QBR. So he played really solid for his team. He didn't have to, put up these crazy stats. That's not, what it took to beat Mississippi State. Yeah. So I really give Kentucky a whole lot of credit, and it really starts at the top there with Coach Stoops.
Yeah, very good point there. Good win for Kentucky. LSU took down Florida in the Swamp, 45-35. As the Tigers trying to get back rolling there.
This is one of the more interesting ones to me because I think this is, I'm going to deviate a little bit. I think this is what Auburn can take away when they look at LSU. LSU could not have looked much worse than they did in their game the week before against Tennessee. At home, special teams mistakes everywhere. They just looked terrible. Yeah. And they came back and they corrected those mistakes, came back, bounced back, and got a really nice win over Florida. I think that this is a perfect example of being able to look yourself in the mirror and then correct the things that you need to correct and then move forward. This now is a team that's 5-2, and outside of, some self-inflicted penalties or self-inflicted things in the season opener against Florida State, and then some self-inflicted things against Tennessee, this team is, a few snaps away from being, undefeated on the season. Now, Tennessee came out and they beat them, so I'm not saying that LSU was better than them by any chance. I'm just saying that LSU is a really dangerous football team as they move forward in their year. So, they'll have a big game, big test this week against Ole Miss. But I think getting the win over Florida puts them in a different space mentally as they get ready for the Lane Train.
Yeah, it certainly does. Another SEC team getting a win was Arkansas. They stepped out of the conference and went out to play a good BYU team and got a good win, 52-35. And that, I think, really puts Arkansas back on track.
Yeah, similarly to what we just talked about with LSU, bouncing back after their loss and coming through with a big win. Arkansas did just that. You heard Brent Beard just a minute ago talking about how this could be the catalyst for this season as they move forward. It's very easy to fold up the tent after you lose 3 straight. This is a grind for Arkansas as far as their overall scheduling goes. 3 really tough games back to back to back. But in order to pick themselves up, after facing Texas A&M, losing that game in a game that they probably should have won, Alabama, and then the game last week against Mississippi State, to go out to Provo and take on a really, really good BYU team, get the win there. We saw what happened against Baylor when Baylor went out there, did not get a win. So obviously, I think Sam Pittman, like I talked about with Mark Stoops, Sam Pittman's got this team believing in themselves, and they have a nice run here towards the end. So they didn't really, get the results that they wanted in that tough road SEC stretch, but going out of conference, I think, did them a lot of good.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. And so great weekend for SEC football. Several teams have the week off, but we got some good games nonetheless this week as well that we'll continue to preview as we move through this week. We'll grab a break here and come back and talk a little Braves baseball. We'll check in with what Brian Snitker had to say following the season, and we'll look around at some other baseball happening as we get into the championship series, tracking down, see who will be playing in the World Series. We'll do that coming up next. We will be live out at Jacksonville State. We'll be talking with the head coach, Rich Rodriguez, on the show tomorrow, as well as a couple of players, hopefully, as well. So be listening tomorrow as we bring you our show from Jacksonville State, recapping the Gamecocks' big win over North Alabama and getting ready for their game, homecoming game this Saturday against Southeast Louisiana. The season for the Braves is, we didn't want to see it over so soon in the division series, but Phillies came ready to play, and when the Braves lost that first game of the series, that really hurt them, because you go into Philadelphia in a place where, first of all, Philadelphia sports are going great right now.
Yeah.
But that place was rocking.
Yeah.
For a baseball stadium, for October baseball, for a team who hadn't been there in since 2011, I think. You could tell they really wanted that, and they got it Saturday.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that they ended the regular season on a really long road trip as well. So it had been just a long amount of days since those fans that already loved their baseball team, it'd been close to a month since the last time they saw their team physically play. And this is a team that's just playing very well. And hindsight's always 20/20. So I know I'm not going to, Monday morning quarterback or armchair this thing. However, I do think there is something to be said about playing in the wild card round, because obviously if you get the bye, you get the rest. But if you play, you get confidence. And I think that this Phillies team is one that's playing with a lot of confidence going into that series, confidently at the end of the regular season. And then they went into the playoffs, got that, big win over the Cardinals. And I think they just used that to fuel themselves into the run that we're seeing now. And it's strangely reminiscent of what we saw last year from the Braves. And Brian Snicker mentioned that as well. It's like this run looks familiar. So I won't be a bit surprised to see this Phillies team go really deep, especially seeing the chaos that we've already seen in the National League.
Yeah. What we thought was going to happen in baseball is not happening. The Padres, of course, taking out the Dodgers. I saw something earlier. It said Freddie left the Braves to go to L.A. to play 4 hours longer. For his season to be extended for 4 hours. But the Dodgers going out as well. So the Phillies have a chance to make some noise in the National League. And I think that'll be a cool series. The Phillies and Padres, two teams that folks didn't expect to be here.
Not at all. And I think this Padres team was built. And we said this at the time when they made that big trade for Juan Soto. This team was built to start competing with the Dodgers. I don't think anybody thought year one, without Fernando Tatis, by the way, it's just like the Braves last year. They made that run in the playoffs without Acuna, and this team is playing without one of its best players. And I don't think that people saw the results coming this early. So yes, it should be a really fun series. Lots of star power in there. You have Juan Soto, you got Bryce Harper, two teams that are playing really well, playing hot, and playing with confidence. And that's makes for really good baseball. But you're absolutely right. Nobody saw this coming, and here we are with these two teams battling it out for a spot in the championship. And obviously, in my opinion, I think this is going to be a really interesting series on all levels, from the offensive standpoint as well as from defense.
Yeah, it sure will be. But looking at the Braves, you finish up a year where, the young guys really dominated the year. You think of guys like Michael Harris coming in, Vaughn Grissom coming in, Bryce Elder, Spencer Strider. These young guys really led your team for a lot of the way, and I think for Braves fans, that's exciting. And a lot of these guys, they're staying. They're in contract. Austin Riley signed a big one as well. So I think there's a lot to be excited for moving forward.
100%. I think if you're a Braves fan, you feel really good, not just because the guys are young, but they're locked up. Outside of Dansby Swanson, and there are a lot of people think that there's some hope there that he will resign. But Kyle Wright. Think about Kyle Wright, who led the National League in wins this year. He was teetering on being a professional baseball, or not a professional, but a major league on the major league level, going back and forth between the minor leagues and the major leagues. And then he comes out and has a phenomenal season. Austin Riley comes back and has a really, really good season, signs that long-term deal. Michael Harris signs his long-term deal. You found something in Vaughn Grissom. This is a team with a whole lot moving forward. I think if you're a Braves fan, you're on pins and needles for spring training coming up next year and making a run that doesn't start 10 games out of first place.
Yeah.
You're not starting behind the 8 ball. I think that this team now will given the end of the year, this team will really come out with a lot of focus, a lot of drive, a lot of excitement as they go into the 2023 season.
And Brian Snitker, I know, spoke after the season just to kind of sum up this 2022 year.
Yeah, he did. He talked about just the series overall and some of his takeaways from the 2022 campaign.
We ran into a really hot team, pretty much. I mean, they're hitting on all cylinders. They're playing great baseball. They got big hits. They shut us down offensively. And, it's just, I think all the credit goes to the Phillies. I mean, they came in here, like I say, they got hot at the right time and played a heck of a series.
Snit, what will you remember most about this team?
Well, the resiliency, how these guys kept fighting like they always do, how we were, kind of treading water there for a long time, and then they got it going. And like I told them, I mean, the goal when we leave spring training is to win the division. Till you win the division, you don't have a chance to do anything special. And, because you never know what's going to happen. You don't know what team's going to get hot, what, things that have to go right for you to go deep into the postseason. And we got in. It didn't happen for us this year.
Brian Snitker there, just following the season and giving his thoughts. And you look back at this Braves season, coming off the World Series, and the season didn't start like you would have imagined it would. But in the end, they came back, they won the division, and finished against a really hot team in Philadelphia. Not the team you thought that would have put the Braves out. It was the Philadelphia Phillies, but a team that's playing really hot. It kind of reminds me of the Braves last year. They got really hot at the right time.
Yep, they certainly did, and it lets you know that anybody can get taken out at any point. But you mentioned it's kind of weathering the ups and the downs of the season. You think about the cold streaks from certain players that were normally really hot. You think about the development of guys like Matt Olson and others. And you think about this Phillies team who the Braves dominated this regular season.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show it doesn't matter. Once you get to the playoffs, it's about who plays well, who plays hot. The Braves did it last year, got it done. And yeah, there can be a hangover effect going into the next season. I think there was a part of that for this Braves team as they moved forward into this year. But give them credit, they battled back. And I think the date that you always bring up is June 1. Since then, they had a really, really strong end of the season. You can't ask for much more from a young baseball team. And now I think they'll go into the 2023 season with a great sense of urgency going into the year and making sure not to get behind the 8 ball as bad as that they did.
Yeah. And you mentioned Dansby Swanson a second ago. The way that Alex Anthopoulos spoke yesterday is that they're going to try to retain Dansby Swanson, have him back as a Brave, but we'll see how that unfolds if they're able to get that done. Would love to see him back as a Brave, but I'm excited about the future, excited about the guys they do have locked up, and certainly excited about some Braves baseball in the Pitchers and Catchers report on time this year. That's something exciting too.
Yeah, I mean that's not to be taken lightly. The fact that the baseball regular season. It got off to a really shaky start because you had the lockout between the players and the owners, and who knows what guys continued to work on their game and who didn't. But they were able to get it in, get the deal done, and we'll have baseball, obviously moving forward. But about Dansby Swanson, Brian Snitker was asked about that at his press conference, and the reporter, I think, framed it the right way. He said that just in case this was his last game, putting on that uniform. What did he think? And Snitker talked about just glowingly about Swanson, his ability to compete, his will to win is top notch. Now, and people will poke holes at his game and say that he did not have a good postseason, and he did not. And I think that he'll be the first one to admit that. But I do think that he's a net positive for this team as they move forward. And I think his value is seen by Snitker, Alex Anthopoulos, and everybody else in the organization. They know it's now just coming to the right dollar figure, right year on the contract, getting those numbers sorted out, and see if he can put that a hat back on next year.
Yeah, for sure. And some baseball on tonight in the American League as the Guardians and the Yankees go into Game 5. Series tied 2-2. That is on TBS tonight. Again, in the American League Division Series, the Guardians and the Yankees. Who you think's going to come out of this one?
I like the Yankees at home here.
Yeah.
I like the Guardians. I think the Guardians were a really nice story, just like Seattle. A really nice story, but I think the firepower with the Yankees and getting that much needed win yesterday got out to a really nice start, and I expect a little bit of that today as well. I expect the Guardians to give them a good game, but New York, and especially seeing now Braves out, Mets out, Dodgers out, I think they had their eyes clearly on that championship trophy. And it starts tonight being able to pick up a clutch win and finish the season for the Guardians.
Yep, for sure. Phillies Padres begins tomorrow. They're in the National League Championship Series in San Diego. That's going to be on Fox Sports 1. And then coming up on Wednesday night will be game 1 of the American League Championship Series. TBS will have the ALCS there for television. We'll grab a break here. Got to talk a little Atlanta Falcons. How about the Birds yesterday going out and getting a win over the 49ers? We'll talk about that and more coming up next.
The Press Box.
continue. Chase Robinson, Gerhard, Mathangani here with you. Our phone number, 256-413-1029. That is 256-413-1029. Glad you're joining us today. We've been talking a lot of SEC football, but hey, there was one team that we like to keep tabs on that got a big win this weekend, and that is the Atlanta Falcons. Had a big win over the 49ers, 28-14. Marcus Mariota, 13 of 14, 129 yards and 2 touchdowns.
And this is a weekend full of surprises. We talked about the Braves, we talked about Alabama. I think this might be one of the biggest surprises of them all. The Atlanta Falcons knocking off a team that a lot of people think, when healthy, can make a Super Bowl run. And the San Francisco 49ers obviously play great defense, but give a lot of credit to the 49ers. I think the over-under on win total in Vegas going into the year for Atlanta was second to last, behind just in front of Seattle at 4. It's either 4 or 5.
Yeah.
They've competed in every game so far this season. They've been within the possession of every game, and they've already won a few of those games. So I think that if you're an Atlanta sports fan, yes, the Braves, obviously, disappointed you a little bit, but the Falcons, are pleasantly surprising this year.
They sure are. And we'll have to see if we can get our friend D'Orlando Ledbetter on. Got to know he was pumped up for the win there. He's been covering that team for a long time, and especially, coming in with the expectations they had. It's exciting. And you mentioned they've competed in every game. I mean, this team, when they've been able to put good drives together, they've been able to make it happen.
Yeah, they certainly have. And this is a team that, in my opinion, they have all of the elements to be able to compete at a really high level week to week. Now, will this team win a Super Bowl? I don't think so. But when you have a team that competes as well as they have, and think about it, they've lost their leading rusher in Cordell Patterson. He's on IR, so he's out for a few more weeks as well. So it just feels like, every bit of adversity that's hit this team, they've met it, and they've continued to grow.
Well, I think, it's never perfect. But I think we played really well situationally, and that comes in every phase. I mean, the games within the games, right before the half, get that touchdown for the half, make them use their timeouts. You get in there, and they may get a couple yards, but be able to end the half, like there's 9 seconds to go, no timeouts, and so knowing that situation and not letting them out of bounds, and if they're going to chunk it down, if they completed it, the half's over. And then Isaiah went up and got the interception. So if they got over 100-something yards of offense right there with 0 points, that's a huge win by us. The way we were playing, and to make them eat that clock, and that's being in tune and knowing and staying disciplined in that situation. That was where I saw a lot of growth as a team.
It was Arthur Smith, head coach there for the Atlanta Falcons, talking about the growth of the team, and that is really, really amazing what they were able to do. And hate I didn't pick them on Friday afternoon. We did our picks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think we just all keep waiting, for this team to be the team that we thought they were at the beginning of the season. And I think it's now just time to say, hey, this is Atlanta. This is an Atlanta team that can really fight, that can really compete. Through 6 games, they're 3-3. They've been in every game so far. Very close to beating the Super Bowl champions. Very close. People think that they probably should have had another shot at the football against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers as well. So I don't think you could just throw in the fact that Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to win the NFC South. I think that you have to include this Atlanta team to be able to compete and make some noise. And they've now won 3 of their last 4.
Any other surprises as you were watching some NFL football yesterday?
I was really surprised at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers staying in this division, obviously playing a Pittsburgh team that's growing. I mean, this team does not have a really good offensive line, going to a rookie quarterback. Then Kenny Pickett ended up getting hurt. Mitch Trubisky came in there, and I think it's just the way the Bucs are playing is not the Bucs team that we've played. We've seen play throughout these first few games of the season, and I think the problems are fixable. It's a lot like Alabama. Like what we're seeing with them, I think a lot of it's fixable. Obviously, a lot of noise off the field with Tom Brady and the personal matters that he's going through. But I expected this team to be a lot better through 3 games. Meanwhile, on the team that's got a similar record, the New England Patriots are playing really well as well. So I'm really, surprised by them. But for me, I think that, the Falcons obviously take the cake. And how about the Jets? The Jets are playing really good football there as well. So really like the Jets. And then obviously, we got a treat. If you're a football fan, yesterday, I mean, that 3:30 game was incredible between the Chiefs and the Bills. And I think we're watching 2 of the most dynamic quarterbacks that we'll see for a really long time. They put a graphic up there. Is this the new Peyton and Tom Brady. I think it is the new
Yep.
Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, and they gave us a classic day that the Bills won.
Yeah, really good day of NFL football yesterday. Got the Broncos and Chargers coming up tonight in some Monday night action, and that game in LA. What stands out to you about this matchup?
This one is coaching to me because both coaches have had some questionable calls, fourth down calls for the Chargers coach and Staley, and then just what is this offense look like under Nathaniel Hackett in the Denver Broncos? We expected it to be a lot better, and it just hasn't. Two of the best quarterbacks in the league. You have Justin Herbert and Russell Wilson, but neither one of them playing, I would say, at an apex level. This can be a big get right game, I think, for both teams as they move forward. But some questionable coaching throughout the course of the season between these two guys. So I'm interested to see how this game is coached tonight.
Yeah, for sure. That is at 7:15 tonight on ESPN. So you can decide whether you want to watch some American League Division Series or Monday Night Football tonight on TV. That's what's going on in football and baseball. College basketball has come out with the AP preseason top 25. We're going to look at that coming up and more. We'll take your phone calls as well. Stick around as we roll on here on this Monday. WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9. Jason Gerhard with you on a Monday afternoon. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be live out at Jacksonville State. Rich Rodriguez will join us. A couple of players as well. As we'll recap that JSU win. Look ahead to homecoming this week. And, man, excited, as always, to be out there. AP poll for basketball came out today. And, it's hard to believe because we get so caught up in football. It's hard to believe that, we're really just a few weeks away from college basketball.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting, I think, because I think that just about every team that plays Division I basketball in this state will have some interesting storylines. But you're right. That's the reason why I love the month of October, because you get a little bit of NASCAR, you get some football, you get some baseball as they roll through the playoffs, and to me it's always really exciting. But I think both Auburn and Alabama have a lot that they're looking forward to going into this year. I think that both teams have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, but the way things ended last year, lots of questions to answer. Some key impact players are gone for both teams, most notably for Auburn. So it's hard to believe, but we're right here. It's just around the corner.
And looking at the AP poll, the North Carolina Tar Heels sit at the top, and they made a great run to the championship game last year under first-year head coach Hubert Davis. And at times you thought this could be a team that could win it. And during that game last year, they fell short, but certainly you got to think they are that top team.
Yeah, a lot of returning players for this basketball team. I think that they showed a high level of athleticism. Obviously, some questions surrounding Duke. So you think that North Carolina might have the upper hand in this matchup. I think that this is a really easy choice as the number one team. I think a lot of people liked Gonzaga going into the year. They've recruited really well, but to me, North Carolina has to be the favorite going into each season.
Yeah, and Gonzaga number 2. Are they ever going to be able to get it done and be that team we always think they're going to be?
It's just one of those things that it's like Clemson in football. I don't believe it until I see it. And They got so close so many times, and then they finally, broke through, and they've had a consistent run of success. I'm talking about Clemson here. I think I need to see it from Gonzaga. I don't know if anything could have been set up any better than the last 2 years. They had Jalen Suggs 2 years ago, hit that buzzer beater to go to the Final Four, couldn't get it done. Last year with Chet Holmgren, Drew Tinney, the coaching staff all back together again. They were ranked number 1. They were the number 1 overall seed. It's just I felt like this team I got to see it before I can predict them. I got to see it. So I'm very, very okay with having them as the number 2 team in the nation.
And they got Houston 3, Kentucky 4, Kansas 5, Baylor 6, Duke 7, UCLA 8, Creighton 9, and Arkansas 10. So we got Kentucky and Arkansas representing the SEC there in the top 10.
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting as they move forward, because Kentucky is, to me, there's a lot of noise around Kentucky about just their lack of postseason success over the last few years. They had that one national championship under Calipari, and I know that this is a team that's begging for more. And you can make the argument that all the other blue bloods have done a lot better than Kentucky has over the last few years, and whether that's North Carolina, whether that's Duke, whether that's Kansas. I think all these blue bloods have kind of surpassed Kentucky. I think a lot of people now have Kentucky kind of in the rearview mirror, and this is the chance for Coach Cal and those guys to kind of put themselves back on the map. Kansas there being at 5, I think is really interesting. And then at the same time, Arkansas, another really good basketball team coming back this year. So to me, it's really interesting as we get closer and closer to see how the SEC teams do. But I really expect it to be a really fun chase, a really fun run to the SEC championship, because I think there are a lot of good teams here. We can see a lot of teams into the Sweet 16 and deeper out of this conference.
Yeah, they got Tennessee 11, Texas 12, Indiana 13, TCU 14, the Auburn Tigers at 15, Villanova 16, Arizona 17, Virginia 18, San Diego State 19, Alabama 20, Oregon 21, Michigan 22, Illinois 23, Dayton 24, and Texas Tech 25.
Yeah, Auburn obviously has a lot to answer as they have two players in the first round going drafted in the NBA with both Walker Kessler and Jabari Smith. Some questions to answer there. They have recruited well. Johan Trejor and a couple other guys that they expect to fill in those shoes. And for Alabama, they've recruited well as well. And so they had a disappointing run to the end of last season. Can Coach Nate Oates kind of revitalize this team as they move forward? And I think they'll look for leadership. They'll try to find some new leaders. But both teams being in the top 25, I think is good. Auburn spent a lot of the year last year as the number one team in the nation. And can they get back to the upper echelon? They got to prove it because they, like I said, they have guys to replace, some big time guys. Bama's got to prove it too, even though I think we got a great amount of talent there in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, that's for sure. And so, like you said, this should be a really fun SEC basketball slate, and to see what Alabama and Auburn can do this year, to see if they can get back to winning games, winning big games, getting far. We'll see what this college basketball season holds, and Jacksonville State as well. Their second season in the A-Sun, so we'll be keeping an eye on the Gamecocks. And once again, we'll be your home for Jacksonville State men's basketball here on Fox Sports 102.9. As the men last year representing the A-Sun because of Bellarmine winning the tournament and being in their transition year. The Gamecocks represented the A-Sun in the NCAA tournament. JSU women last year with a great run and went to the WNIT. So I'm excited about Gamecocks basketball, men and women.
Yeah, they both had a really great season last year, just like with Auburn. Both teams have some questions to answer and some guys to fill in. But on the women's side, it's really interesting because about eight or nine of their players, their key players, are back from last year's basketball team as far as their contributors, their leading scorers. And so I think there's going to be a lot more consistency early on with the JSU women's basketball team, but I expect the men's basketball team to find their stride as well. This is a team that played really, really well. They found some shooters on the outside about midpoint of the year. So as they start off in non-conference action, I'm really excited to see how both teams navigate that world. And then usually as the calendar flips to the 2023 is when they jump into conference play. So yeah, outside of Alabama and Auburn, I think JSU's got a lot to look forward to, both on the men's side and the women's side. And we'll see if they can make once again another run into the postseason with both teams, dancing last year, and we'll see if both teams can dance again this year.
Yeah, certainly so. Excited for some basketball. It's about to get to that time of the year where we've got so much going on at one time, because college basketball really cranks up as we get into the month of November, and we're just a couple of weeks out of November, and they'll be getting underway in the first week or so in November, and college football on top of that. So it's about to get really busy.
Yeah, it certainly is, and I honestly am really, really excited about it because you just got so many different storylines, and just like we found out in baseball, you can't take anything for granted, and you can't just assume that anything will happen. It's a topsy-turvy world out there, and you got to go out and earn it. And I think every team knows that. But this year's college basketball season, I think, should be really fun, especially if you're a fan of the SEC, because not only Alabama and Auburn, but I think there's a depth of teams here. So no matter where you live in the state of Alabama, I think that you'll have very quick access to a lot of good basketball over the course of the next few months.
For sure, and should be a lot of fun. Be sure to join Greg Watkins and myself tonight at 6 o'clock for the Monday Night Quarterback Show, as we'll recap some high school football. We had a lot to talk about in high school football today. Gerhard, as you know, what a weekend. We talked a lot about that Alexandria Southside game, and then Leeds and Moody, too. Games that had a lot of meaning, but were kind of polar opposites when you look at the final scores.
Yeah, exactly. The Leeds Moody game, two teams that score a lot. Played a defensive battle, 14-13, and then a team that plays really good defense in Southside, and Alexandria plays really good defense as well. They had a shootout there in their matchup, and both teams getting north of 40 points, and so some key storylines really developed over the course of last Friday. Outside of those games, we got a chance to basically crown region champions. Outside of some crazy things happening this week, get a clearer picture of the four teams in every region that's going to the playoffs and where they'll be seated. Are they on the 1 line, the 2 line? Are they traveling? Are they at home? So High school football season in the playoffs to me is always really fun, but I think some interesting things are stacking up for teams in our area.
Yeah, they are for sure. And so join Greg Watkins and me coming up tonight at 6 o'clock here on Fox Sports 102.9 for the Monday Night Quarterback.
Yeah, it should be a really fun deal. And I want to insert something in here really quickly. It's some news that just came out. The Tennessee football has been on fire. Obviously we thought that Knoxville and Neyland Stadium might not exist this morning. Thankfully it is. But some more stadium news coming out of the state of Tennessee. The Tennessee Titans and the city of Nashville have agreed for a $2.2 billion domed stadium. This is coming without any taxpayer money, being funded a lot by the NFL, by the Titans. And so I think this is really interesting because the city of Nashville, to me, is going to try to get into the game that Atlanta's in and that New Orleans is in the South, because having a dome stadium, and depending on how good it is, you're now in the hunt for Super Bowls. You're now in the hunt for when the World Cup comes to the United States. You're now in the hunt for the college football's national championship. Yeah. So I thought it was really interesting that the city made that announcement today, and they'll allow it to work out. And I think it's got to still be approved by the Metro Council. But I thought that was really interesting news that came out of the state of Tennessee today.
Yeah, put Nashville on the map as a destination for some of these big events.
Yeah,
it's a great place for it. Nashville's grown a lot, and I could definitely see. At one point they were talking about maybe when Major League Baseball is expanding, would Nashville be a sign? I think Nashville is a sports city, and we could see that maybe with a project like this.
100%. Those that remember the NFL draft that went there, I mean, it was just those drone shots, those blimp shots were incredible. So this is not only a growing city. I think you had a lot of transplants that came during the pandemic that were really maybe frustrated about the laws in their state. Yeah. I know a lot of Californians came over and they made their home in Nashville. I think a lot of people really like that area. It's really great schools right outside. You think of suburbs like Brentwood and a few others. You have some affluent areas. So yeah, this is, to me, the city of Nashville striking at the right time. They know that their city right now is on fire, and if you can create an added revenue stream by getting major events in your city, then the stadium really helps. And I think that for them it's an investment. They see that $2.2 billion dome stadium as an investment for their city. If they can get it done, they can get it approved. I think it'll be really great for the city.
Yeah, I think so too. That's big there for Nashville and the Titans. That's all the time we have for you today. We got the press box coming up on the other side, and we'll be back with you tomorrow from 2 to 4. Have a great rest of your Monday.
The Press Box.